Hey, yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. This is Smart TCG, and today I'm going to be going over my personal ratings on the brand new cards that are set to be released in Scarlet and Violet Journey Together. Scarlet and Violet Journey Together is the brand new set that will be releasing in March, and today I'm going to be going over my personal ratings on the cards that have been leaked. So, with that being said, if you enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and let's hop right into it here. So, starting off here, we have arguably the most talked about card from the new set, Zoroark EX with that iconic trade ability. This ability has been on multiple different Pokemon. One of the most powerful abilities ever put on a Pokemon card. It's simple. You discard a card from your hand and then you get to draw two cards. If you get multiple of these Zoroarks onto the board, you can use multiple trades as well, meaning you can draw tons of cards every single turn. A great consistency boost, and also doesn't even need to be the focal point of the deck. You can just use this as a support Pokemon and not even plan to actually want to use its attack. But if you do want to use its attack is actually pretty solid. Night Joker, for 2 dark energies, you choose one of your benched Ends Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. Now, we haven't gotten a whole lot of Ends Pokemon, so that is one of the things that wait to see if we get some more powerful ones. So this card has a ton of potential as an attacker, but we're mostly looking at it from its ability at the moment. But as this card gets more like powerful cards that like it can use and it can copy those attacks, this card has the potential to be one of the best cards ever created. So yeah, and Zoroark, super good, and I'm excited to build some decks with it moving forward when the set releases. Next up here, we got Lilligant. Lilligant is not really here for its attack. Its attack does 60 damage, doesn't really do a whole lot, but its ability is really good. Its ability reads your grass and fire Pokemon's attacks do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. This ability also stacks as well, so if you get multiple of these Lilligants onto the field, you're going to be doing a 40, 60, maybe even 80 more damage with grass or fire type Pokemon, which is pretty good. So at the moment, I've rated it a 7 out of 10. Has a lot of potential. If it actually had a pretty powerful attack, it might be an 8 or a 9. But since its attack is not really useful, it's just mainly used as a support Pokemon. But with some pretty cool fire types that are releasing in this set, I think it could potentially pair up with them quite nicely. Next up here, we're going to hop into some of the fire types. Now, this is admittedly one of the weaker ones. We have Magmortar, which is a stage 1 fire type with 130 HP with that Magma Surge ability, which reads, during Pokemon checkup, put 3 more damage counters on your opponent's burned Pokemon. This doesn't do a whole lot for a stage 1, not necessarily super worth it, but maybe could be used as a support Pokemon. Its attack Searing Flame, dealing 90 damage. Flip a coin of heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now burned. So it's not going to be used for its attack. It's going to be used more or less as a support Pokemon to deal a little bit more damage with that burn. I kind of think it's mediocre, not necessarily the most powerful Pokemon, but maybe you play it as a 1/1 line in one of these fire decks that could potentially burn. It's okay. I think it has some potential, but not one of the best cards in the set. Next up here, we got Blaziken EX. I think this card is pretty solid. I gave it a 7 out of 10. Its ability, Overflowing Spirit. Once during your turn, you may attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. This card has a lot of potential, I think, because of this ability. Just pretty much any ability that attaches energies from the discard pile to your Pokemon is usually pretty good. Its attack for 2 energies, 1 fire, 1 colorless, deals 200 damage during your next turn. This Pokemon can't attack, so that's a little bit unfortunate. But you can play things like Switch, to fix that. So I think this card is actually relatively solid. The only thing really drawing it back is it is a stage 2, so you're going to need to find things like Rare Candy, but it does have 320 HP, so oftentimes, can survive an attack, which is nice, and I do think its ability is really powerful. Next up here, we got Ends Darmanitan. This is another card that isn't necessarily super powerful, but it has that backdraft attack, which deals 30 damage for each energy card in your opponent's discard pile. So if you're playing against like a Sarah-Ledge deck, for example, you're going to be dealing a lot of damage. And it has that Darmani Cannon, which deals 90 damage. You can discard all energy from this Pokemon, and the attack does 90 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So for 3 energy to do 90 and then at best 90 to the bench, doesn't really seem very good. So unfortunately, this card doesn't have a whole lot of potential. Like, I mean, the even funnier thing is like if they have like Manaphy on the bench, then you can't even do the 90 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So yeah, I think it's just relatively mediocre. Just has some actually like cool attacks. I do think Backdraft is the one that is kind of interesting. But yeah, the second attack isn't necessarily very powerful. So I gave Ends Darmanitan a 3 out of 10. Next up here, we got Volcanion EX. Volcanion EX, I gave it 8 out of 10. It's a basic, pretty powerful Pokemon with that Scorching Steam. Once your turn, this Pokemon is in your active spot, you may make your opponent's active Pokemon burned. So paired up with, the Magmortar, that could, create some situations where you can actually take some pretty big knockouts on Pokemon with a lot of HP. And then you got Heat Cyclone as well, dealing 160 in energy from this Pokemon to one of your benched Pokemon, which is pretty cool. So you can maybe play this up with the Magmortar and the Blaziken, but I feel like that deck would be kind of inconsistent. But I think it does have some potential. I think the ability just to burn, and then if you have something like Latias, then you can simply retreat this. And then go into something like the Blaziken, for example, then attack with that. So I think it's kind of cool. I think it has some potential. And yeah, Volcanion is a pretty cool card. It is nice to see Fire getting some more support finally. Next up here, we got Ludicolo. Ludicolo has that Vital Samba ability, which reads each of your Pokemon in play gets 40 plus HP, and this effect does not stack, so you can't get multiple of these into play and then stack all the abilities. I gave it a 5 out of 10, mainly because gaining HP is not really that important of a thing in the Pokemon TCG right now. If this read that your attacks do 40 more damage, then this card would actually have a lot of potential, but you're setting up a stage 2 just to give yourself 40 more HP. It's not really worth it. It's a cool ability, but right now, so many things can hit crazy numbers of damage, so that 40 HP oftentimes really isn't the difference maker in my opinion. So yeah, it's a cool card, but getting HP isn't necessarily super important right now. Next up here, we got Ens Joltik. Ens Joltik has that crackling short attack for 2 colorless. Before doing damage, discard all Pokemon tool cards from your opponent's active Pokemon. If you discarded a Pokemon tool card in this way, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. So being able to paralyze is pretty cool. This could be paired up with a Zoroark, and you can copy this card, which is kind of cool. But if you're playing against a deck where they might not have like any type of tool cards and just things like that, and you're not really able to paralyze, it just kind of feels like a useless card. So I think it has some potential in some situations, but if your opponent knows that you play this card, they can play relatively careful and potentially not open up the situation where you can paralyze them. But I think it has some potential. I gave it a 4 out of 10. Maybe I could bump it up to a 5 out of 10, kind of based off like the metagame. But yeah, this card's kind of cool. Next up here, we got Iono's Belly Bolt EX. I gave it a 6 out of 10 because it has a pretty cool ability. Electric Streamer, as often as you like during your turn, you may attach a basic lightning energy card from your hand to one of your Iono's Pokemon. Usually, as I said a few minutes ago, anything that can attach energies is usually pretty good. This is just a stage 1 as well, so it's not the most difficult thing to set up. And yeah, its attack necessarily isn't very good, but we're more thinking about it for that ability. So yeah, I think this card has some potential, and 200 HP for a stage 1 is also pretty good. All right, next up here we got Iono's Kilowattrel. Is a stage 120 HP lightning type. I did give it a 7 out of 10 because of its ability, Flash Draw. You must discard a basic lightning energy from this Pokemon in order to use this ability. Once during your turn, you may draw cards until you have 6 cards in your hand. So you can get an energy onto this, and then you can use the ability to discard and draw 6, which is pretty cool. Pretty powerful ability, paired up with some of the, other lightning type things like the Belly Bolts. You can actually do a lot of things. So yeah, I think that this card has, some potential. Just being able to draw 6 cards is really, really powerful. So yeah, I think this card, could be good in some type of Iono lightning deck. Next up here, we got Lily's Clefairy EX with that Fairy Zone ability. The weakness of each of your opponent's Dragon-type Pokemon is now Psychic. So able to hit weakness is pretty cool. With that Full Moon Rondo as well, doing 20 plus 20 more damage for each benched Pokemon. This attack oftentimes is not going to be able to take, one-hit KOs on a lot of things, but maybe you could surprise them. I assume this card might see some play in Gardevoir EX decks post rotation, as Gardevoir needs some type of psychic attacker. Yes, it does like lose the Curlia, which is really rough, but I think Gardevoir in some sense is still gonna survive in the format just because it's such a powerful card. So potentially paired up with a Lily's Clefairy, you could possibly make something work. But yeah, this card's okay. It has 190 HP, not a ton. Its ability is okay. It's very specific. I think that's the problem with this card. Its ability is just so specific. So I think that's one of the things that holds it back. And its attack is like average. It's really nothing special. So I gave it a 6 out of 10. Next up here, we got Bayonet. Bayonet is a 90 HP stage 1 Pokemon with that Cursed Speech attack. This is the attack that has been getting quite a bit of talk recently. It does no damage, but your opponent shuffles 3 cards from their hand to their deck. So potentially this card could be played in some type of, maybe control deck where you could, lock your opponent and then, put their hand like down to 0 and just like continuously, loop this over and over and over again, and then potentially try and like burn like the resources, like on yeah, like there's like some, I guess, like interesting things that you can do like with it. The problem is you don't do any damage. You're not actually able to take knockouts, so that is kind of a problem. There's also things like um MUEX as well. People can draw stuff, and it's it's okay. I think it has some potential. I think someone's going to come up with some type of pesky staller control deck that uses this card. So I gave it a 7 out of 10 because I think it has some potential moving forward. Next up here, we have a Lily's Comfy. Lily's Comfy, I gave a 6 out of 10. Not really for its attack that does damage, dealing 30 and putting it back into the hand, which is okay, but mainly for that flower call. You get to search your deck for any number of basic Lily's Pokemon and put them onto your bench, then shuffle your deck. So great to be able to set up your Lily's Pokemon. But the thing about it is that if there's not a ton of powerful Lily's Pokemon, then that attack is actually not super good. So I think it has potential, but Lily's definitely needs some support to really make this a powerful Pokemon. So I gave it a 6 out of 10. Definitely has some potential moving forward, but not necessarily an overwhelming card in any way. Next up here, we have Mamoswine EX. What was the last time they made a good Mamoswine card? I don't even know if they've made one like that's actually like really like competitively viable. But Mamoswine EX here, unfortunately, I gave a 3 out of 10. It is a 340 HP stage 2, so it is a big boy with that mammoth carry. Once you're in your turn, you may search your deck for a Pokemon, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. That's not a bad ability, even for a stage 2, just being able to search for a Pokemon once you're in your turn. That's not bad, but its attack dealing 180, and it does 40 more damage for each stage 2 Pokemon on your bench. Stage 2s are already, hard enough to get set up, so this card is gonna, kind of struggle to get going. Maybe you could play it with like the Tatsugiri EX possibly, to get a bunch of stage 2s on the board. But yeah, unfortunately, I think that would be a little bit inconsistent, but it's a cool looking Pokemon. It has actually a pretty cool ability, and its attack is also, pretty creative. So maybe if there's a way to get more stage 2s on the board consistently, this would have a lot of potential. But at the moment, I gave it 8 out of 10. Sorry, Mamoswine. Next up here, we got Magearna. Magearna has that auto heal ability, which reads, as long as this Pokemon is in your active spot, whenever you attach an energy card from your hand to one of your Pokemon, heal 90 damage from that Pokemon. It has 1 retreat cost, but you can attach something like Rescue Board or just having, something like Latias on the board. So the retreat cost is not really that big of a deal. Spike Draw dealing 20, drawing 2 isn't necessarily super important. I gave it a 5 out of 10. I think it has some potential. Just healing Pokemon right now in the Pokemon TCG isn't necessarily something that's, super good or like really important. So I don't think that this card is going to be played in a lot of decks, but its ability has some potential, and maybe in the future this card sees some more play. So yeah, it has some potential, but at the moment I don't really know how good it is. Next up here, we got Hops Zacian EX. This is a card that has also been getting a ton of talk. It is a 230 HP metal basic with that close cleave attack, which for 1 colorless, it does 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Very similar to Buzzwole, which was a card years ago, which had that same attack, and then Brave Slash dealing 240 during your next turn. This Pokemon can't use Brave Slash. So for 4 energy, that's not necessarily, very, I would say, I guess, like economical. However, there are, like multiple ways to, get this guy going. And Hops also has so much support as well. There's a lot of support for this card, so I gave it a 8 out of 10. The card, just kind of like at first glance, its attacks aren't necessarily super threatening, but with cards that we're about to go over, this card gets significantly stronger. So yeah, this card has a lot of potential. Not really on its own, it needs a lot of other support, and once you get that support, it is really, really good. So I gave it an 8 out of 10. Next up here, we got En's Reshiram. 130 HP Dragon type basic with that powerful Rage, which attack does 20 more damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon, and Virtuous Flame dealing 170. It's okay. It's probably just going to be used as a card that I guess Zoroark can, copy, but on its own, it's really not, exceptionally powerful. So I gave it a 2 out of 10. All right, hopping into some of the Hop cards. We got Hop Snorlax. This card I gave a 9 out of 10. This card is amazing. It has an ability called Big Belly. The attacks of your Hops Pokemon do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So this is how things like that Zacian are going to be able to deal a lot more damage. The attack isn't anything special. 3 energy, 140 isn't necessarily that great, but that ability is just so powerful, and it's on a basic. This card has a ton of potential. and I definitely think that it is going to see quite a bit of play and is a staple of Hop decks. However, this ability does not stack. I felt like if it did, and you could put 3 down and be doing plus 90. If you could put 4 down, be doing plus 120. That'd be a little bit too broken. So they did limit this card by making it not stack. But yeah, overall 9 out of 10, really good. Next up here, we got the Dunsparce EX here, this colorless Pokemon. I gave it a 4 out of 10. It has that attack Adversity Tail, which deals 60, and then it does 60 more for each, or it does 60 times 60 for each of your opponent's Pokemon EX. So it's not great. If your opponent just doesn't really bench a whole lot of EXs, it's not very powerful, and its second attack is very underwhelming, dealing 150 for 3, and it's not affected by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon, so it's pretty much just like a shred attack that goes through everything. But yeah, nothing special, unfortunately. But if you hit a deck that needs to bench a bunch of EXs, Adversity Tail could definitely do a lot of damage for only 1 energy. So I gave it a 4 out of 10. I'm not going to give it a 1 or 2 just because that first attack has some potential, but yeah, it's not really the most powerful card, unfortunately. Next up here, we got Hops Double. I gave this card a 7 out of 10. Its attack isn't necessarily anything special. 3 energy, dealing 80 damage is not very good, but its ability is what's been getting a lot of talk. It has that ability, Challenge Horn, which reads, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may switch in one of your opponent's benched Pokemon to the active spot. So it's pretty much a boss's orders. When you evolve it, has a lot of potential. Cards like this we've seen in the past, very similar to the Lycanroc X, or GX, yeah, Lycanroc GX, that came out several years ago. This card was played, with the Buzzwole, and that card had pretty much the exact same ability where you evolved into the Lycanroc, and then it was effectively a boss's orders as an ability, which is really cool. So yeah, I think this card is decent. Not anything super overpowering, but I think it has a lot of potential, and definitely we'll see play as a probably 2/2 or 3/3 line in a lot of these Hop decks. Yeah, it's pretty good. I gave it a 7 out of 10. You could argue that it could be like even an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10, but at the moment, I gave it a 7. Next up here, we got Hops Cramorant. This card is unfortunately terrible. For 1 energy, if your opponent's active Pokemon doesn't have exactly 3 or 4 prize cards remaining, it does nothing. So it can't even attack at the beginning of the game to donk. If it said that it could attack only if your opponent had 6 prizes left, this card would actually be pretty good. Because you could, donk things a lot of the times, get that turn 1 attack. It would actually probably be a 6 or a 7 at least. But unfortunately, it can only attack once, usually your opponent is set up, which means doing 120 for 1 energy just is not very good. So I gave it a 2 out of 10. Maybe it's okay as like a middle game attacker, paired up with like the Snorlax being able to hit for 150. So it has some potential, but at the moment I just gave it a 2. Next up here, we're going to hop into some trainer cards. We have Brock's Scouting. This is a supporter. I give it a 4 out of 10, but it's kind of interesting. So you get to choose one of the effects. You have 2 options. I actually really like these cards where you kind of get the option of what you want to do, but it reads choose 1. Search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon, reveal them, and put them into your hand. Then shuffle your deck. Nothing special, but the other one, search your deck for an evolution Pokemon, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So it's okay. It's nothing really special. I just gave it a 4 out of 10. You're going to be hard pressed to find a time where you would use this card over, any other type of supporter. So I think that's, kind of the problem with it, is that it's a cool card, has some, pretty cool effects. However, I'd rather be, playing something like a Professor's Research, something like an Iono, some other type of setup card over something like Brock Scouting. Next up here, we got Exchange Ticket, another card that's been getting a lot of talk. I gave it a 7 out of 10. This card's really interesting. So basically what it does is after counting your prize cards, you shuffle them and put them on the bottom of your deck. Then you take that many prize cards, or you take that many cards from the top of your deck and put them face down as your prize cards. So you pretty much take your prize cards, put them on the bottom, and then put more prize cards down as a replacement. So that's pretty cool, because if you prize a lot of really important cards, you can just put those onto the bottom of the deck and then, reset your prize cards. So I think this card has some potential, maybe in some, I guess, like control deck. Definitely makes control significantly better, because control can definitely struggle to prizing lots of important, like one-ofs and stuff. So yeah, I think this card is pretty cool. I gave it a 7 out of 10. I'm not 100% sure yet what it's going to be good in, but I'm pretty confident that this card will be used at some point. Next up here, we have Hops Bag. I gave it 8 out of 10. This card is very powerful. This is a item card which reads, search your deck for up to 2 basic Hops Pokemon and put them onto your bench. Then shuffle your deck. This card is a slam dunk 3 or 4 of in the majority of decks that are running that Hop engine. Great for consistency. I only didn't give it a 10 out of 10 because it is only limited to hot Pokemon. It's not limited to like any Pokemon. So unfortunately, you can't get anything you want. That would be crazy. But yeah, it's still pretty good overall. Great consistency for that deck, and I look forward to seeing how much this card is actually used in hop decks. I feel like it's got to be a staple 3 or 4, but maybe people only play 2. All right, let's move on to Hop's Choice Band. This card is another incredibly powerful card. Give it a 9 out of 10. And it reads, when the Hops Pokemon this card is attached to uses an attack, that attack costs 1 colorless energy less. So great to be able to make some of those Pokemon easier to attack with, and it does 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. This card is broken. This card is just so powerful and makes the Hop engine work. Hop has so many really powerful cards. Honestly, from the cards that we've seen right now, it seems like the Hop engine out of um the things that we've seen, for example, like the ends, cards like the lilies, it seems like Hop's Pokemon are the strongest overall. And yeah, this card is absolutely fantastic. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Definitely gonna probably be a 2 or 3 of in the majority of Hop decks. Next up here, we got Iris Fighting Spirit. Gave it a 5 out of 10. Nothing really special here. You discard a card from your hand if you do draw cards and you have 6 cards in your hand. Not a terrible card. Not necessarily a card that I would recommend playing with cards like Research and Iono out, but it's definitely not a bad card. But at the moment, I think it's kind of the definition of mediocre. Maybe you find a deck where you're trying to get like lots of cards into the discard pile, and this card can kind of help out. So yeah, give it a 5 out of 10. It's definitely not bad, but not necessarily very good either. Next up here, we have Levencia, which is a stadium card. Give it a 5 out of 10. Once during each player's turn, that player may put up to 2 basic lightning energy cards from their discard pile into their hand. This card is pretty decent. It's really good in lightning decks. However, it's only limited to lightning decks, and I would say lightning decks are okay, but definitely not, I feel like, the number 1 type in the Pokemon TCG at the moment. It does have some support, but putting 2 energy into hand isn't necessarily a really broken effect anyways. So I just gave it a 5. I think it's a cool card. Will definitely be played in some of those lightning decks. Maybe Miraidon plays it. But yeah, I think it's just kind of the definition of average. It's not bad though. Next up here, we have Lily's Pearl. This is another tool card, which reads, if the Lily's Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out by damage from an opponent's Pokemon attack, your opponent takes 1 fewer prize card. So this card will probably be a slam dunk 3 or 4 of in the majority of those Lily's decks. And if Lily's decks start to see more play, then people might have to start playing things like Lost Vacuum to get rid of this Pearl card. I gave it a 7 out of 10 because it has a lot of potential if people aren't really teching for it. But if this deck, or I guess an archetype that plays this card, starts to do well, then people will definitely make sure that they have a way to handle it. So I think it's decent, but can definitely be teched for. Next up here, we have Ends Castle. This is another stadium card. Each Ends Pokemon in play has no retreat cost. Pretty cool. Definitely will be a staple stadium card, just giving that flexibility. For sure, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Pretty solid card overall. I expect it to, probably be a card that is played as like maybe a 2 or 3 of in some of these Ends decks. Just, giving free retreat is nice. However, you could play Latias instead, for that, basic Pokemon retreat instead. Like, I guess that is an option, over something like the Ends Castle. But I think that, giving free retreat to everything is, really nice, including those stage 1s, which is something that the Latias can actually do. Next up here, we have Ends PP Up. This is one of the best cards from the new set, if not like the best overall card. It just reads, you attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to one of your benched Ends Pokemon. This card is broken. Just as an item card, being able to attach an energy from your discard pile is just absurd, because you can play 4 of these. You can use multiple of them on 1 turn. This card is broken. Not a whole lot else to say about it. This card is going to really be stable in Ends decks, and it's going to be a big reason as to why these Ends decks are actually competitively viable. So yeah, 9.5 out of 10. I would have given it a 10 out of 10 if it read any Pokemon, but that's the only reason as why it's a 9.5 is simply because it's only towards those end Pokemon on the bench. Next up here, we got Post Wick, I gave a 8 out of 10. This is another really cool stadium card, which reads the attacks of Hop's Pokemon do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon before applying weakness and resistance. Just another really good card that just continues to increase damage more and more and more for those Hops Pokemon. This card is great. Definitely going to be a staple card in those Hops deck. Hop just has a crazy amount of damage modification. So yeah, really, really cool card. Definitely going to be a slam dunk staple in some of those decks. But anyways, that is going to do it today for my, kind of set review on the cards that have been leaked so far in Journey Together. Let me know what you think your favorite card is right now that has been leaked. But yeah, the set's really cool. I'm really excited to get my hands on some of these cards when they do release in March. And yeah, thank you so much for all the support. As always, I appreciate it. If you enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I will leave a link as well in the description to all these translations. If you're looking to make proxies and stuff like that, I'll make sure to put that in the description for you. But anyways, thanks so much for all the support as always. This is Smart TCG. I'll speak with you guys again soon. Peace out.